Yes, it's time to pay tribute to the first lady of shape-changing car-type robots. The original, the progenitor, no Alita come latelys here. A villainess whose prominence wouldn't be equaled until Black Arachne... No. Thunderblade. No. Slipstream. No. Well, I'll let you know if it happens. As you can see, she used to be locked down. Actually, she used to be 2 lockdowns. Locks down. What's the plural on that? Locks Dwayne. And you should also know this project actually came about from a YouTube comment suggestion, and that's pretty rare. I tend not to get a lot of mileage out of those because a lot of them tend to be a little, shall we say, optimistic. You should build 10,000 animated Omega Supremes and distribute them to the children of the world by flinging them from the back of a parade float as if they were candy. Also, you have to build the parade float. I wound up having to Frankenstein this gal together out of bits from both a Junker blazing lockdown and a Junker regular non-blazing lockdown. I can rebuild her. I have the technology. She's like the $6 million man if he cost $20 and was not a man. Obviously, the arms are largely unchanged. Just took off the shoulder pads and fixed the hands. Legs, I just replaced the front panel with something a bit more uniform, since, unlike Lockdown, she's not supposed to look like she's been cobbled together out of miscellaneous other robots, despite the fact that she was. The torso is where the party is at. The core of it is still Lockdown, but obviously I cut away his windscreen and his old head assembly. You can see where the pin goes through there to attach all of this hinge stuff. And most of what I've added here is styrene of some stripe or other, except for the epoxy sculpt face and a chopped up Lego canopy for the windscreen, which I painted black from the inside to give it the illusion of transparency and depth, which almost entirely failed to work in any meaningful way at all. There's a fair bit of cut vinyl detail, such as the fetching stripes on her tracksuit pants here and some of the face detail. And I realized the cone is probably a little bit large compared to Cartoon Crasher, but I opted for a non-cheating transformation, and that means that the chest and the head actually have to come together in the alt mode, which means they need to be of matching size. Speaking of the head dome, I'm reasonably pleased with how this came out, given that her actual Gobot head cartoon is sort of weirdly impossible to render in 3 dimensions, being basically a flat face on a weird nebulous shape. I went for a 3D face on a flat piece of styrene and then the Afro bicycle helmet shape hanging out there behind. And I debated for a while as to whether or not to give her a faction symbol, and I figured I'm going to have to do a little bit of headcanon here to figure out, is she just some random Decepticon? Is she a Gobot from an alternate reality? Because alternate realities never get old. And this is what I came up with. Thousands of years ago on Cybertron, after the war was over, there was a group of young bots. They didn't want to spend their lives farming Energon or fighting Decepticon remnants on the Outer Rim. They wanted to go out among the stars and spread the gifts of Cybertron's history and culture and technology with other species. They called themselves the Galactic Outreach Brand Orientation Team. And to show their commitment to peace, they refused to wear faction symbols or carry weapons. And so, filled with lofty goals and high hopes, they set out aboard their dorky-looking spaceship and were immediately eaten by a rock lord. Crasher alone survived, drifting for millennia through space, trapped in a rock lord dookie, until she crash-landed on Earth, where she was found by Flame War and rebooted into violent lunatic mode. And the rest, as they say, is herstory. Posability is, I will admit, shit. I mean, to be fair, Lockdowns was already pretty poor with his arm joints all in weird locations and his knees that barely move. And then I took all of that and added the head that doesn't move in the slightest. And these weirdly relaxed hands don't really help her strike a cool pose. As much as I love animated, that was kind of a problem with the whole line. I don't have any other Lockdown-based bots to show you, except way back when Prime was relevant. This mold as a Viacon was one of 4 Prime-mated customs I came up with but never had time to work on. I had a head sculpt based on Jazz, and I was going to swap out the hook for this car grill hand cannon type flip-me-do. But that's as far as I ever got with it. If anybody wants to borrow this idea, you're certainly more than welcome to do so for a modest 20% royalty in perpetuity. I do, however, have another crasher to show you. This is DX9 Kokomon, and she's extant. It's really just Mirage in makeup, but you have to take what you get in this scale. Huh. Gave that one a Decepticon logo. The mold is pretty decent. Transformation's really fun. Alt mode is nice, but they maybe should have done something to make this black plastic look a little nicer. There's just something sort of cheap looking about it. Can't quite put my finger on it. Posability is good, but get used to having to lean her against something because she's a champion level faller over her. She's not bad, but I am glad I got her at half price. At full price, I think I would have felt a little burned. But having said that, if you want something vaguely Crasher shaped in this scale, she's literally the only game in town. Her alt mode is Lockdown with an ice cream cone of doom on top. I go back and forth between thinking this looks good and thinking that the cockpit is maybe a little large. It certainly looks a tad goofy if you put her next to her mold brother, but why would you do that? Stop it! Go lie down. She's mostly toy accurate rather than toon accurate, but I did take the cartoon's suggestion of leaving off most of the text, so we don't have Crasher written down here on the sides, because I generally manage to identify her 9 times out of 10 without needing it spelled out for me. Oh, and as you can see, there's no removable hand dealy bit. This part just folds up as part of transformation. I don't care for parts forming weapons, so when I have a chance to leave them off, I do exactly that. So transformation, we're going to start back here with these little panels. Just fold them up and out of the way, like that. This lets you pull up this whole new assembly just to get it kind of out of the way. So now we're pretty much just doing lockdown. Now, for reasons I can't entirely explain, she pegs together way more tightly than any lockdown mold I've ever had, which is bizarre. I think it's because these are off blazing lockdown and these are off non-blazing lockdown. It's the only explanation I can come up with. Now we're just basically doing lockdown at this point. Spin the waist around and reposition the camera. Split the arms, pull them down. Nothing special here. If you've done lockdown, you know how to do this. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This whole assembly goes up and over to the other side and settles down like so. And we extend here, fold that down to reveal the head, fold that in, fold that down along her back, and there, more or less, is Crasher in robot mode. So thanks for listening to me ramble about Crashers and lockdowns in my totally not the right color for this shirt. I'm going to get out of here before Kokomon falls down. Hopefully we can do this again in like 16 months tops. I wound up having to Frankenstein this gal together out of bits from both a Junker blazing lockdown and a non-blazing Junker lockdown. A blazer Junker blazing lockdown and a non-Junker non